Hey, this is Buck Dharma of Blue Oyster Cult, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
Welcome to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. Today's show is brought to you by uppercutchops.com. Check out their tasty selection of all-natural, dry-aged USDA prime Angus and Wagyu steaks and chops. Wait till you taste their best-in-class New York steaks, the filet mignon, and of course the king of all, those gigantic cowboy cut and tomahawk cut ribeyes. Best I've ever had, probably be the best you ever have as well. Check them out at uppercutchops.com. That's uppercutchops.com. Or give them a call, find out what's for dinner, 714-948-0100, 714-948-0100. Again, 714-948-0100 for uppercutchops.com. All right, a big welcome to everybody listening in on our CBS NBC and Fox Sports affiliates and independents from coast to coast. Go over something that most people don't hear about too terribly much. And why are we doing this? First of all, because we can. A lot of people like to talk about the NFL draft, the Major League Baseball draft, this draft, that draft, whatever draft. And a lot of people are confused as to how the rules work. And so I'm going to start with Major League Baseball because it is very complex. The NFL draft, a lot of people have a very good grasp of how that works. But frankly, Major League Baseball drafting is a very different animal. There are so many layers to it. And that goes even to the very start from the old Rule 4 draft, basically assigning amateur baseball players to Major League teams. Well, the draft order is determined, of course, by a lottery system. In case you don't know, now where the teams didn't make the postseason, basically, if you stink, you're going to get a higher pick, kind of like we've seen in the other sports, right? So that's the old tanking idea. But nonetheless, the lottery, of course, determines the first 6 picks in Major League Baseball, with the teams with the worst record having the best chance at the first pick. And we've seen that in different sports where teams would tank just so they would get the top pick. And I would say in 2024 in Major League Baseball, the number 1 draft pick being Paul Skeens. This guy turned out to be absolutely legit. Paul Skeens is a rock star in Major League Baseball. He was the number 1 pick, and this guy was every bit of a number 1 pick, a generational pitcher. He's a throwback. The guy could pitch, I would say, arguably in any era because he's got so much. He throws from different arm angles, which I'm not really a big fan of that, but I get it. But the kid is incredible. I mean, truly incredible. And if you're a sports card collector, like Antoinette, who's watching us right now or listening to us nonetheless, who is a sports card collector, I can assure you it's guys like Paul Skeens. Those are the baseball cards that you want to have because this guy will do nothing but go up in value. Of course, I'm going to spin off to the side on this a little bit. Thinking about those baseball cards and draft picks, what's interesting about most pitchers, their cards, their rookie cards and so forth, they don't typically have the value as the regular position players because, well, frankly, those players are really playing once a week. If you look at it that way, they're on a starting rotation, they're pitching once, sometimes twice a week, and there's load management and all this other garbage. But Paul Skeens is one of those cards that you absolutely must have as a pitcher. And his cards have climbed in value at the same rate of position players, just like the Ellie De La Cruz cards. And Ellie, if you don't have an Ellie De La Cruz card, any kind of a rookie card, you better get some. And I'm not talking just one. Ellie will be the first billion-dollar player, in my opinion. He'll be the absolute first billion-dollar player in baseball. And man, this kid is exciting. He's fun to watch. He makes so much happen on the field. And all right, so I'm going to get back to this draft situation here. All right, so as I completely digress, I have to because I get excited about baseball cards because I've been collecting baseball cards since I was a kid, just like a lot of our friends and family and colleagues, and now it's a business. But anyway, back to the rules when it comes to Major League Baseball. The eligibility, of course, the player must be resident of the United States, Canada, have graduated high school, and either have completed at least 1 year of junior college or be eligible upon completing their junior year or turning 21 in a 4-year school. Now, that's not to say about the foreign players. We're going to get to that a little bit later. So we're talking about essentially North American players at this point. Essentially, we're going to stick with the U.S. and Canada because Mexico has its own rules, just like all the Caribbean countries and all the other internationals around the world. Of course, the draft order with the first 6 picks are determined by a lottery, as I had mentioned before, and there are 20 rounds in Major League Baseball's draft. And of course, there's a bonus pool. In case you don't know, teams in the first 10 rounds have assigned bonus pools for their draft selection. So there is a penalty, though, for overspending. So look, you can't just throw crazy mad money at these players because you'll get penalized. And teams that exceed their bonus pool face penalties, including taxes and future draft pick losses. You know, I wish the NFL would really impose their alleged draft penalties. And that's the one thing we don't really see a lot of. We see teams tanking and this, that, and the other. And it just seems like they can fall by the wayside and nothing happens in the National Football League, where things are a little bit different in baseball. The players are, well, let's put it this way. The players are taken care of from, for example, the baseball assistance team. That's the acronym BAT, B-A-T. And we had a show back in, I think it was 2018. We had a show with Chris Kempfer, who is one of the big attorneys right here in town, also on the Oakland A's transition team to the Las Vegas Athletics. And we also brought people in from Major League Baseball with him. We did a really cool show about how baseball players are taken care of from draft all the way until death, technically. And people say, well, minor leaguers, they don't get paid a lot of money. Okay, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the point is, baseball takes care of their players. Football, they have an ongoing issue with taking care of their players. And that's why our dear friend who passed away, the great Bob Grant, he had an organization, it still does. In fact, it's called the Retired Players Congress. You check that out at playerscongress.com. And the goal of the organization was to help the players that didn't make a bunch of money pre-collective bargaining in 1993. But my point is, baseball takes care of their players better, in my opinion, than all the other sports combined. They really lay out a plan. And yes, maybe the minor leaguers aren't paid a bunch of money. And yeah, they have a bumpy road to get to the bigs. And so there are several layers to get to the bigs, right? You've got your rookie, your A, your double A, your triple A, and then you got all the international leagues. But the reality is, you've got a long road to climb to get to Major League Baseball unless you're a supersonic superstar like Paul Skeens, for example, right from number 1 draft pick, basically right to the club. But you got to realize that there are a lot of hoops, and baseball really does a good job. I'm not going to applaud the commissioner because I think the commissioner has tinkered with the game. But what I do believe is that baseball really goes out of its way to help its players. And I have to say, folks, that's a really good thing because the other ones, in my opinion, don't seem to give a damn. And of course, they always deserve an astounding round of boos. I just don't like the fact that they don't. But anyway, back to this draft. Now, there is a competitive balance pick, so to say. Competitive balance draft picks are awarded to teams with the lowest revenue and the smallest markets. So in baseball, we think of the smallest markets as the Kansas City Royals. Obviously, Kansas City is a very small market as far as the size of the city goes. And I would even argue that the Miami Marlins are a small market team, albeit Miami is a big city. They don't have the allure of the bigger markets. But when we think of these smaller market teams, we ask ourselves, all right, how much resource do they have to pay for this player or that player? I mean, it was amazing for me that Bobby Witt Jr. got the contract that he did out of the Royals only because it's a smaller market team. And the Milwaukee Brewers, there's another classic small market team. The Minnesota Twins are a very small market team from Minneapolis, St. Paul, right? Twin cities. And so there is a competitive balance in there. So the tables aren't always tilted towards the Dodgers or Yankees or Mets or the Red Sox, where they have endless money seemingly to spend money on players. So I like the idea that there is some method to the madness. Now, I'm not so sure what that madness is, but when I look at what's going on in Major League Baseball, when it comes to some sort of competitive balance, I ask myself, is it fair and reasonable that in Major League Baseball we have some balance? Basically, it's almost I guess what I'm looking for is some parity, right? It's almost a league-imposed parity in this particular case. So yeah, the teams with the lowest revenues and the smallest markets, they should have some kind of balanced draft picks. I don't see anything wrong with that. Why should they be penalized because they're in a smaller market? That's the one thing that baseball does that the other sports, four major sports, football, baseball, basketball, hockey, that's the one thing that the others don't do. And so if you see the fairness aspect of it, it sort of has the fans in mind as well, because the fans themselves have some reasonable... I mean, look, the fans have an enormous impact on the games. They have an enormous impact on the teams, the revenues, and so forth. And this, I'm going to get into the actual competitive balance draft pick when we come back from break. We're going to go to break right now, folks. Lots of fun stuff here on the circus, and this is a content-filled show that you're not going to get with other programs, because you're not going to get this dialogue. You know why? Because they can't bank it, being the other organizations or the other shows, because they can't make enough money with it. But we're going to talk about it because we can. Back here on the circus in just a few moments. Don't go anywhere.
Attention business owners. You and your customers are listening to this right now. Face it, every business needs customers, even yours. The Sports Circus is a primetime nationally syndicated program that's carried on ABC, NBC, CNBC, and Westwood One News affiliates, plus CBS, Fox, and NBC sports affiliates across North America, with coverage from Hawaii to New York. Also, the Sports Circus is available to the 180 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, and the Sports Circus gets about 4 million website visitors per month, which could click through your website and bring sales. The Sports Circus provides great content featuring celebrity guests from sports and entertainment to our audience every weekday, which your company could greatly benefit from by increasing your visibility, foot traffic, eyeballs to your website, and calls from potential customers. Call us right now at
714-948-0100. Again, 714-948-0100.
Or email us at info@thesportscircus.com. That's info@thesportscircus.com. Drive your sales today by advertising with the Sports Circus.
Could you use a little extra money right now? If you'd like to borrow up to $100,000 and get pre-approved in minutes, call the number we'll give you at the end of this commercial. Our lending partners have already loaned millions of dollars to individuals just like you, and we're ready to lend you up to $100,000 if you qualify. Even if your credit is not perfect, you could use the money to pay off high-interest credit cards, for home renovations, or consolidate existing debt. You can get flexible, easy-to-pay terms. The consultation to find out if you qualify is free. To find out if you qualify for our special financing program, call this toll-free number 24 hours a day. 800-335-1376. 800-335-1376. 800-335-1376. That's 800-335-1376. Important terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Loan amount, annual percentage rate, and term will vary depending on creditworthiness. Applying does not guarantee approval. Account approval is subject to verification and confirmation of your credit history and acceptance by a lender. If you choose to apply for a loan through us, a consumer report will be obtained to evaluate your creditworthiness in connection with your application for credit.
That's the sound of sizzling, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks from UppercutChops.com. Their best-in-class filet mignons, New York steaks, and the king of all steaks, the tomahawk and cowboy cut ribeyes are the best in the business. Even their Prime Wagyu burgers will likely be the best you've ever had. Browse the full selection of steaks and chops at UppercutChops.com from the comfort of your home or on your mobile device. UppercutChops.com delivers all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks and chops directly to your door, without the hassle of going to the grocery store and fight crowds to pick from a small selection of average and best meats with injected steroids, fillers, and coloring added to look good. Find out what's for dinner at UppercutChops.com or call 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100. Or make your selection directly at UppercutChops.com. thesportscircus.com.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm Roy Firestone. Now it's time to throw it back to Sal.
Thank you, Roy, and welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster, Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. This segment brought to you in part by our friends over at the College of Southern Nevada Athletics. Check them out at csncoyotes.com for upcoming games and events. That's csncoyotes.com for the College of Southern Nevada Athletics. All right, a big welcome back to everybody listening in on our CBS, NBC, and Fox Sports affiliates, including our friends over in Atlanta, WDJY 99.1 FM, as well as our friends in Auburn, Alabama, WAUD. Thanks for joining us over on the home of the Atlanta Braves in Auburn, Alabama, from Columbus, Georgia, all the way to Montgomery. Everybody else up and down the Midwest, throughout the heartland, all the way through the West Coast, out to our friends in Honolulu on CBS Sports 1500 KHKA. That's home of the New York Yankees, the San Francisco 49ers, and the Alabama Crimson Tide. Thanks for joining us there as well. Plus everybody else on Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Oceanic, Time Warner, Spectrum, WOW Cable, and independent cable affiliates in select markets across America, plus Hotel TV in about 500,000 rooms or so, where applicable, plus on Chicago Food Favorites. How about Chicago Food Favorites, folks? Make sure you check out Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook, a fun page. Look, I started this thing, quite a while back. We'll say about a year and a half ago, thereabouts. We've got about 2,200 members or so right now, and it's growing. You talk about your favorite foods, your favorite restaurants, your favorite recipes, whatever the heck it is. Just don't spam the page. It's actually a group. Don't spam the group. You spam the group, I'm going to probably suspend you. Don't spam the group. It's a fun group. Talk about your foods from all over the place. Doesn't matter if it's whether in Chicagoland or not, because of course we cover all four corners of the earth for all you flat earthers out there. All right, back to Major League Baseball and drafting. And this is something that a lot of people don't seem to have a good grasp on because there's so many rules of it. And I left off by talking about a very special one, in my opinion. There's something called a competitive balance pick. So competitive balance draft picks are awarded to teams with the lowest revenues from those small market teams. Now, a little bit more information on that. When you think about... We'll go back to a little bit of history of a competitive balance picks were really put together, I want to say about 13, 14 years ago, something to that effect. And it was in the collective bargaining agreement. And the process to assign picks was really amended just a handful of years ago. I think it's about 4 or 5 years ago as well. So basically they put it together about 14 and they kind of revamped it in the last 6, 7, 8 years, something to that effect. Nonetheless, the 10 lowest revenue clubs and the clubs from the 10 smallest markets are eligible to receive a competitive balance pick. Fewer than 20 clubs are in the mix each year, as some clubs qualify under both criteria. And all eligible teams are assigned a pick, either in competitive balance round A or round B. Round A falls between the first and second rounds of the Rule 4 draft, the main draft, while round B comes between the second and third. Now, clubs drafting in the competitive balance rounds also receive more international bonus pool money than the minimum of $4.75 million. And those drafting in competitive balance round A will receive $5.25 million, while those in competitive balance round B will get $5.75 million. Now, unlike other draft picks, competitive balance draft picks can be traded. However, they cannot be dealt simply in exchange for money and can be traded only by the club to which it was awarded. In other words, the picks may be traded no more than one time. And in case you're looking for a little bit of more history, you can go ahead and search that. But that is a very interesting bit in the draft that, well, frankly, the other sports, they don't offer that. And I think that's a very cool feature. Now, there's also, of course, the Rule 5 draft. And, of course, that allows teams to pick players who have previously signed with major league teams. So when you think about the collective bargaining changes, as I, clear my throat on that one, the first 6 picks are determined by a lottery, which we know. Teams that didn't make the postseason are eligible with the odds determined by their winning percentage. And the top 300 draft prospects are guaranteed 75% of their assigned pick value as long as they submit to a pre-draft physical, right? And that's a whole nother discussion. So when you ask how the Major League Baseball draft works, look, it's also known as the first-year player draft. It's a system where the teams select amateur baseball players from high school, colleges, and other amateur leagues. And so maybe you're out of high school. Maybe you're a high school player. Okay, great. Maybe you're in between high school and college. You don't know what you're doing. Maybe you're playing Legion Ball or something to that effect, some kind of independent league. Well, those people are eligible as well. So the draft typically takes place in June or July, and it consists of 20. So there's the June draft. I was a part of that 100 years ago, with each of the 30 Major League Baseball teams receiving 1 pick per round, or 600 selections total. And the draft order, of course, determined by that lottery that I mentioned, the first 6, with the teams with the worst record, as I said. Now, the remaining picks are determined by the team's performance in the previous season and by the team's placement in the postseason. So that lottery, which I mentioned, teams that did not make the postseason in the previous year participate in that lottery, and the lottery is a state lottery style process where the teams with the worst record has the best chance of winning the first pick. Now, postseason finishes are another issue. Teams that made the postseason are slotted into the draft based on their finish, just like traditionally in all the other sports. And so if you won the World Series, for example, you're picking last. Real simple. So the remaining picks, of course, are determined by your records, worst records, of course, being picked closer to the lottery. Now, the draft rounds being 20, with each of the 30 Major League Baseball teams receiving 1 pick per. Now, in the top 10 rounds, Major League Baseball assigns a specific bonus pool value to each pick, while later rounds have no assigned slot value. Now, okay, read that again. In the top 10 rounds, Major League Baseball assigns a specific bonus pool value. So there's assigned value here. Now, what is that? Each team receives that signing bonus pool based on their draft order, determined by their draft position. Teams cannot exceed their signing bonus pool without facing penalties. And the penalties, I think, is reasonable. Teams that draft in the competitive balance rounds also receive more international bonus pool money, as I mentioned previously. So when you ask about the rules of Major League Baseball, is it fair and reasonable? Well, look, you got to be at least 17 years of age in the first place to participate in the draft, or completed their junior year of college to be 21. So look, you've got to have some method to the madness. Players generally need to have graduated high school, be at least 17. And I think that's pretty reasonable, but there are other rules for the younger players in the Caribbean, for example. High school players, all graduating high school seniors are eligible. They don't need to have attended college to be eligible. Four-year college players, look, the college players are eligible after completing their junior year. They can also be drafted if they turn 21 within 45 days of the draft. Now, junior college players, this is a very popular route, are eligible to be drafted at any time. And so if you understand how the junior college side goes, well, you're ahead of the game because a lot of people really don't. But a lot of the players, they'll go from high school, and they don't necessarily need to go to play with a big 4-year college at this point, because first of all, the cost sometimes is prohibitive. But you can be recognized now in the age of the internet, of course, at just about any school in America or basically around the world at this point. So there are other considerations for those. Let's just say you're around the world. Players who are residents of or who have attended educational institutions in the United States, Canada, or a U.S. territory like Puerto Rico are eligible as well. And, of course, the draft order for the first round is determined by the lottery, which I mentioned. But remember, there are different rules in the grand scheme of things. And so that Rule 5 draft, any club with an open spot on its 40-man roster is eligible to make a selection. Teams pick in reverse order, as I mentioned, from the previous season. But the important thing is, hey, you got a roster spot, buddy. We'll fill it for you. And then you say, well, wait, you said there was a rule for 17. Well, way back in the day, that's 17 years of age. The youngest player to ever appear in a Major League Baseball game was a guy by the name of Joe Nuxhall, who was 15 years old when he pitched for the Cincinnati Reds way back in the time machine on June 10th of 1944. He would not turn 16 until July 30th that year. And listen, the Cincinnati Reds, were you cheating? No, you weren't cheating. I just like to poke at our friends that follow the Cincinnati Reds. I like the Reds myself. But yeah, 15 years of age. Imagine that. 15. Boy, that is something. I mean, how many rounds? Yeah, 20 rounds. Are you going to find one of those diamonds in the rough? Maybe you will. Are you going to find one of those undrafted players that, or maybe they were into the draft, then they fell out of the draft, and then they went right back in again? Can you do that? Yeah, we'll get into that. So, is it possible to find those diamonds? Absolutely. Baseball is one of those weird sports where maybe you might have stunk at the high school level and you excel at the collegiate level. Maybe you were an average player in high school and you really did well in college, but maybe you're terrible in the pros. Maybe you're bad at both levels, the high school and college, but you may be good where? In the pros. I don't know, folks. We're going to be back with this baseball talk in just a few minutes here on the Sports Circus. Lots more to come. Don't go anywhere. I'm your ringmaster Sal of the Sports Circus, a primetime, nationally syndicated television, radio, sports, and entertainment show. The Sports Circus covers topics others are too scared to talk about. There's no other primetime show like it on here that'll punch you in the face and you'll beg for more. Join me, Hall of Famers, world champions, and all-star celebrity guests for chaos and controversy here on Libsyn and all podcast platforms, plus thesportscircus.com. Remember, folks, it's a circus and we prove it every day.
Hello Americans, it's Uncle Sam here. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes to the IRS or state, don't worry. I've got important news that may help you negotiate a lower tax bill. In today's economy, the IRS has released a variety of new rules and is offering more flexible terms to help Americans looking to settle their IRS debt. If you apply today, we may be able to lift your wage garnishments and release a freeze on your bank assets or business. Our team of tax professionals can resolve your case and stop collection actions against you. Even if you've been audited or haven't filed a return in years, they can help. Call right now and find out if you qualify to settle your IRS debt for far less than what you owe. Pick up your phone right now and call us for a free $500 IRS tax review. Don't wait. Here's the number.
Call right now. 800-950-2049. 800-950-2049. 800-950-2049. For the last time. That's 800-950-2049.
Do a search on how to get out of credit card debt, and you'll find everything from crazy promises to ways you can try to do it yourself. Many of those ideas just don't work, and they leave you broker than you were. Here's some advice. Call our debt helpline. In a quick and free 5-minute conversation, our experts will listen to you and learn about how much credit card debt you have, what your goals are, and then show you the right solution to help you get out of credit card debt with one new simple, affordable payment. The credit card companies make available special programs to help if you're struggling. All it takes for you to finally get out of credit card debt is one quick, free phone call. So please call right now.
800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. That's 800-948-6817. Paid for by the Debt Helpline.
That's ridiculous.
Quiet, numbskulls. I'm broadcasting.
Hey everyone, Dave Jackson here, ESPN rules analyst on ESPN Hockey, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster, Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMTV studio, AAMP television. Folks, make sure to check out thesportscircus.com for our upcoming guests, our prior guests, recorded shows, which can be found on all streaming platforms. Also, make sure you check out the partners page. Lots of great partners over there. One of those is Al's #1 Italian Beef at 1079 West Taylor Street in Chicago's Little Italy. Al's #1 Italian Beef, 1079 West Taylor Street in Chicago's Little Italy. Creators of the famous Italian beef sandwich. Boy, that's good stuff, folks. If you've never had it, boy, are you missing out. Anyway, check them out at alsbeef.com if you can't get over there to Chicago's Little Italy. alsbeef.com, and tell them the circus sent you. All right. And welcome back to everybody on our CBS, NBC, and Fox Sports affiliates from coast to coast, all of our independents, as well as everybody watching on Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Oceanic, Time Warner, Spectrum, and Wow Cable Television, plus independent affiliates and Hotel TV in about 500,000 rooms or so, where applicable. And Chicago Food Favorites. Make sure you check out Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook, a fun page talking about what? Actually, it's a group. You get to discuss your favorite restaurants, your favorite recipes, your favorite foods, everything you like, everything you don't like. I don't really give a damn. Just have some fun with it and make sure you tell your friends, but don't spam the page, if you know what I mean. Then I'll have to suspend you. All right, back here with the Major League Baseball draft, how all this stuff works. And there are some exceptions and so forth. And again, Major League Baseball draft has 20 rounds in case you didn't realize. And there were 615 in the previous year, total selections across 20 rounds. The draft format, essentially a 2-day event with rounds 1 through 3 on day 1 and everything else on day 2. So you have to ask yourself, is it worth watching? I think it's worth watching. People watch the NFL draft. Why wouldn't you watch Major League Baseball draft? It's 162 games in the regular season. I mean, do Major League Baseball picks go straight to the Major League teams? Generally speaking, no. In the NFL, generally speaking, yes. But then they have to make the team. But, of course, most of them are getting paid millions and hundreds of millions of dollars, so of course they do, which I think the pay is complete lunacy, but it doesn't really matter what I think. But it's very rare for Major League Baseball draft picks to go straight to the major leagues without first playing in the minor leagues. And of course, since the draft began way back in 1965, about 20-odd players, we'll call it about 25 players or so, have bypassed the minors altogether and made their Major League Baseball debut directly from the draft. So there's a lot of reasons why it is not very common. And I would say largely the minor leagues from rookie league, all the way up to AAA. Look, it's really important for player development. Now, we don't see that in the NBA, for example. I have a real problem with the NBA with those players going right from essentially from high school to one semester of college. These are 18-year-old kids. And then they go right into the NBA draft, and then they're playing basically as 18, we'll call it 19-year-old kids. And look, some players are the exception to the rule. The problem is those players in today's time that are the one-and-done players, they don't get a chance to develop their game at the collegiate level and develop their basketball IQ. And I don't care where they're going to school and whatnot. The reality is these young kids are doing what? They're going as an 18-year-old essentially right into pro basketball. And I'm okay with the idea. But this is why the product is not so good, in my opinion, on television or at these games for the National Basketball Association, because what we don't see are mature players. We see either slam dunks or three-point shots. We don't see the mid-range games. The mid-range game has not been developed. There are a lot of strategies that could be learned in all those collegiate years. And so when you go back to the eras of the Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson and Larry Bird and all of those guys, and beforehand, these guys typically stayed in college for 3-4 years. They graduated, most of them did, and they learned the game. They really learned the game. Now, in football, you have to go at least 3 years, essentially. We'll call it 3 years in football, really, because you've got to physically get yourself, I think the rule is 2 years, but you have to physically be bigger, and because you're playing against monstrosities of human, and a real good chance you're going to get hurt. But I don't think that baseball is doing it wrong, because baseball has a draft system, and you could still go right to college. You could be drafted, just like in the National Hockey League. It's another discussion. And you could go right back to college. You could be drafted, go to college, and you can learn and develop your skills. Now, baseball, like hockey, has its developmental leagues, if you will. So in baseball, of course, you got the rookie, your A, double A, triple A, and so you get to develop and develop, where you don't see that in the NBA. In the NFL, you're stuck because there's really no minor league system there. Well, I guess the minor leagues really in college football would be the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12. I guess that would really be your minor league system at this point, which college players are getting paid, which I don't like that idea, because you really take away your amateur standing by doing so. But at least they get a chance to develop a little bit there, whereas the basketball, no, not at all. But back to baseball here. So the minor leagues, of course, is very crucial for developing those skills that are needed for big league baseball. And age and experience is a big deal. Many drafted players, especially those coming straight out of high school, as I mentioned, like in basketball, are still very young and lack the experience needed to compete at the highest level. Whereas basketball, they're forced right into it. And I don't like that plan. I don't like what the NBA is doing. I don't like what Adam Silver's doing. I think Adam needs to step away from the game. I'm a fellow Duke guy. I say this all the time. Sorry, Adam. I just don't think that you're doing a great job helping these kids. You're trying to expand the brand over into, well, Africa and Europe and whatnot and different parts of the world and Asia. But I don't think you are really focusing on the fundamentals of development for the players, even right here in these United States of America. Now, back to baseball. So, look, there are team assessments. Now, teams use the minor leagues to really assess the players' development and determine if they're ready for big league baseball. And service time is another big deal. Now, service time, a lot of people don't hear about this, but there are regulations regarding a player's service time which can be affected by how quickly they progress through the system. And you say, well, what the hell is this service time thing? Well, honestly, it's something that should be instituted, in my opinion, in all big league sports. And when you think about why do Major League Baseball players play in the minor leagues after getting drafted, look, there are 3 reasons: player development, team assessment, and service time. The average age for a Major League debut player born after 1980 is 24 and a half years. About 1/3 of the drafted players are 19 or younger, mostly high school players, and only 3 19-year-olds born since 1980 have really played in Major League Baseball in the first place. And all 3 spent some time in the minors first. Only 23 players since 1965 have gone directly to Major League Baseball. Now, 2/3 of draft picks who are 20 or older, mostly college players, are old enough to start in the major leagues. 525 players born since 1980 debuted at ages 20 to 22. Most common from top college programs where they receive professional level coaching and training, and also had high level coaching prior to college. Nevertheless, while many college players are not disqualified by age or prior coaching from players in the majors, most of them are about 3 years shy of the average age and prior coaching from major league players. And that's why most drafted players must spend 3 or 4 years in the minors to mature and gain experience. That's a really big point. Now, the second reason, of course, is even if a team drafts a 22-year-old star, it's unlikely to put him into the majors right away. And it wants time for its major league coaches to see him play in a professional setting so it can figure out how to use him best as talents. And the minors play 2 to 3 times as many games as college against higher level competition, in case you didn't know. And the lifestyle, of course, is very different from being a college player than to being those in a system. Now, moreover, a team would rather have top prospects gain experience playing every day with lots of attention from coaches, than coming up to be a seldom used bench player in a major league setting where coaches are focused on stars and winning rather than player development, and only a draft pick good enough to start would be considered for immediate major league play. Just like in college football, you see these kids going to Ohio State. And so they're in a good system as far as player development to a degree, but they don't want to sit on the bench for 3 to 4 years or and redshirt, whatnot, and essentially have 1 year left. And so what they'll do is they'll go to that transfer portal and go play baseball somewhere else. Or baseball, they'll go play football somewhere else. But the idea is they don't want to sit on a bench. So what baseball does is they'll say, look, we're going to draft you if we could use you, and we're going to develop you instead of drafting you and sitting you on the bench. That's the big difference, or one of the big differences between baseball and football. Now, also, even teams that have that rare 22-year-old good enough to start in the majors without any minor league seasoning or valuation is too valuable to risk for the sake of maybe winning an extra game here or there. Players brought up too early, either for athletic or emotional reasons, can be set back for years or even ruined. Now, we saw that even with Billy Beane. So, lastly, service time. For top prospects, it's very valuable for a team to delay the time the player is eligible for arbitration, 3 years of service time, and 2 years for the best players, and free agency, 6 years. Suppose you have a minor leaguer who is marginally better than a 22-year-old. Well, guess what? If you bring him up now, you get 2 years of low salary, etc., so forth. If you wait a couple of years, you can hope to get 6 years of high value. That's how the service time thing works. Back here in a few minutes on The Circus. Lots more to come, folks. Don't go anywhere.
Can your IRA stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. Find out how to safeguard your assets with a tax-free rollover with a Genesis Gold IRA, the only IRA that can hold physical precious metals. Call now for your free gold and silver report. Protect your IRA today with one simple phone call and learn how to qualify for up to $10,000 in free silver. Call Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. That's 800-932-5517.
If you served in the Marine Corps, by now you know about the contaminated water problem at Camp Lejeune. If you were stationed or worked at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1987, you probably have a lot of questions. We have some answers. You could be entitled to compensation. Billions of dollars are being allocated to pay for damages to anyone stationed at Camp Lejeune during that time. Unfortunately, it appears that officials may have known the contaminated water problem existed and did little to protect their men. The Semper Fi Code was not honored. If you or someone in your family has developed a serious illness, including various forms of cancer, call this Camp Lejeune legal support line right now. You can't turn back the clock and change what happened, but you can certainly call right now and learn your rights as a Marine. Here's the number.
Call 800-335-7196. 800-335-7196. That's 800-335-7196.
Do a search on how to get out of credit card debt, and you'll find everything from crazy promises to ways you can try to do it yourself. Many of those ideas just don't work, and they leave you broker than you were. Here's some advice. Call our debt helpline. In a quick and free 5-minute conversation, our experts will listen to you and learn about how much credit card debt you have, what your goals are, and then show you the right solution to help you get out of credit card debt with one new simple, affordable payment. The credit card companies make available special programs to help if you're struggling. All it takes for you to finally get out of credit card debt is one quick, free phone call. So please call right now.
800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. That's 800-948-6817. Paid for by the Debt Helpline.
Hey everybody, this is Brian Urlacher. Welcome back to the Sports Circus.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. Thanks for everybody joining us on all of our platforms, all of our affiliates, etc., and so forth. Everybody watching on Pick Your Favorite TV channel, and everybody listening also on Chicago Food Favorites. That's Chicago Food Favorites, a fun group on Facebook. And of course, for everybody watching on there right now, thanks for joining us. Of course, you're getting the audio feed. But then again, we really appreciate you tuning in and learning about Major League Baseball draft, because not everybody really knows about this and how it works. So we're going to continue on with that. And that's for Chicago Food Favorites, by the way, that round of applause. We're going to continue on with Major League Baseball draft here. And some people ask, if a drafted player does not sign with a Major League Baseball team that selected them, what can happen? A few key outcomes actually can occur. Now look, as I had alluded to previously, the player could actually go back to college or junior college. So if the player is a high school draftee, though, they can choose to attend college or a junior college where they could play college baseball. After playing at the collegiate level, they would be eligible for the draft again in the future. Now that's a pretty cool deal. Independent leagues. They could play independent. And the player may also opt to play in one of those independent leagues, which allows them to showcase their skills and potentially attract interest from big league teams in future drafts. And so I had alluded to that, where you can go play. Maybe you're in between high school and college. Maybe you don't know what you want to do. Maybe you want to, test the pro-level waters, maybe the old days of Legion Ball, that kind of thing. So you're sort of in baseball in-betweenville. You're not really sure, do you want to try to make a run at college baseball? Do you want to just play professional level baseball? You don't want to go to college. How do you want to do this? Do you want to see if you're good enough to play in a quasi-minor league caliber system? Well, that's what this is set up for with these independent leagues. And then you have the draft eligibility, of course, and if a player does not sign, they remain eligible for the next year's draft. Now, that could be very interesting, because maybe a team that is really in the toilet, and we're going to pick on the Miami Marlins again because we can, because I believe, in my opinion, Peter Bendix is running that team right into the ground. Their general manager, in my opinion, should have been fired on day one when he dealt off Luis Ariz, two-time batting champion at the time, over to where? The San Diego Padres. And by the way, he dealt him off. I think that was on his first day, as a matter of fact. And worse, he even paid the San Diego Padres the $8 million, if I'm not mistaken, just to go ahead and take this guy off of their hands. I don't understand it. How do you pay another team the salary for the player just to get rid of a guy that the fans actually loved? And by the way, he won yet another batting title. So here's the three-time batting champion, once in the American League, twice in the National League, that a general manager made an extraordinarily large mistake on, and somehow the Miami Marlins allow this guy to be employed there. So and this goes back to that draft eligibility thing that I just said. If the player doesn't sign, maybe it's the Marlins that wants to draft this kid, and the kid says, I'm not going to go ahead and sign. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play another year or whatever it is. I'm going to essentially hold out from this. And they have that right. And there are negotiations in the grand scheme of things, too. Maybe someone doesn't want to play for Peter Bendix. I wouldn't want to play for Peter Bendix. And I just think that even the ownership, for them allowing Bendix to run a team. Last I checked, Peter Bennings didn't even play baseball. I don't even know if Peter Bennings ever even faced any kind of a pitch whatsoever. And you don't know, with all these alleged analytics guys and all this other garbage, have they ever stood in a batter's box and been knocked down by a pitch or drilled by a pitch or had that ball come whistling in? When it goes by your face, you can hear it even just coming in to the catcher. That ball whistles, it hisses at you. And for all you players that don't know, or the people that you think you know baseball, I can assure you, unless you have stood in a batter's box and realized, hey, look, that ball could kill me, or I can hit that ball a country mile. The reality is, if you don't know what it's like to stand in a batter's box and face a pitch, the hardest thing in sports to do is to hit a baseball, and we'll say a fastball. Look, you could fail 7 out of 10 times and be a Hall of Famer. That's how hard it is, folks. And so for people that run teams, they say, we're going to draft this guy, we're going to draft that guy because the analytics are there. Okay, well, the analytics are just one part of the equation. And I like the fact that on draft eligibility, they could say, well, you know what? We're going to wait till next year. We don't want to be drafted, for example, by the Miami Marlins. Yeah, sorry, Marlins, I'm picking on you. It's not that I dislike the organization, I dislike the management. But there are negotiations also that are held in this too. Sometimes players and teams might negotiate a signing bonus, which actually it's a very common thing, and maybe even contract terms that the player finds unsatisfactory. They say, you know what, maybe we'll go ahead and do something a little bit different here. And if we can't reach an agreement, we're going to opt out. We're not going to sign with you, and we're going to wait. And that's either A, the proverbial holdout, or B, we're going to go ahead and play another year or another season, and then we're going to go ahead and enter the draft again. And hopefully the same team isn't going to be in the same draft order and try to pick you up again. But it would behoove the organization that tried to draft you is like, look, we don't want to draft somebody that doesn't want to play for us. And essentially they're going to have a crappy attitude, and that's the last thing that they need. So really the teams likely will pass on them anyway. And there is a big impact, of course, on the team. Think about it. For the Major League Baseball team, if a player does not sign, they lose the right to that player. So it's not like they can go back and chase him anyway. So you can't do wash, rinse, repeat on that one. And the team gains a compensation pick in the next draft if a player is a college player and does not sign. So, I mean, overall, look, not signing can lead to a host of paths for the player depending on their individual circumstances and future ambitions to play. So the one thing I do like is that baseball has a lot of latitude, whereas maybe in football or in basketball, you're kind of stuck. And therein lies another problem. But you have to ask yourself, what is the success rate of players going into the league? And let's face it, look, I don't care if you're if you look at Rule 21. But by the way, I have to say this one because I'm very much against Pete Rose being in the Hall of Fame because of the gambling thing. By the way, that is Rule 21. I just kind of brought that up because I could. And that's the whole gambling thing. Don't violate it, otherwise you got a real big problem on your hands. But when you think about what does it take to get drafted, what is the possibility? How many players really make it to the bigs? And roughly 10 to 17% of the players drafted by major league teams eventually make it to Major League Baseball. And you already have to be 1 out of 1,000 to even be in the draft in the first place. So the percentage varies, of course, but overall, a significant number of drafted players do not make the big leagues. Really. So your chances of failing are already 90%, essentially. And then, remember, you'll fail in baseball 7 out of 10 times and be a Hall of Famer. So what does that tell you how hard the game really is? Yeah. Now, the first-round players, if you're drafted in the first round, you stand about, I don't know, maybe a 3 and 4 chance or 2 and 3 chance of getting to the bigs. Second round, it drops to about 1 and 2. Later rounds, good luck. Direct to the majors, good luck again. Only 24, 25 of those actually have done it in the first place. And so, I mean, the chances of being one of those supersonic players that even skip the draft. What if you want to skip the draft? Well, guess what? It has been done. Several players have skipped minor leagues entirely, for example, not the draft. If you skip the minors, like, I don't really want to do that. Going forward, right into the bigs, it's super rare, but guys like Dave Winfield, the great Dave Winfield, Sandy Koufax, come on, Sandy was Sandy, and, of course, Ryan Johnson, the most recent player to skip the majors, making his debut with the Angels in 2025. It's very, very rare. It's rare because the process of identifying and developing talent is one thing, and the minors are a crucial part of that. Most players require time and development in the minors to really get those skills refined to be good enough. And teams really want to have a track record of player performance and development in the minors before promoting them to the bigs. But it's not impossible to skip the minors entirely. And in some cases, exceptional talent like the Sandy Koufaxes of the world actually do it. But the reality is this. We think about the pay real quick. We're going to close out with this. The pay, look, it's a bumpy ass road to get to big league baseball. And let's face it, it is not a very high rewarding path either. Rookie league pays about $20,000 a year. Now, single A ball, about $26,000 a year. High A ball, $27,000 and change. Double A ball, $30,000 and change. Triple A ball, the average player makes about $35,000 or so. And yes, there are signing bonuses, performance bonuses, and then again, if you make players on the major league affiliates 40-man roster must earn major league minimum. Now that is a whole nother discussion that we don't even have time for, which I think is about $750,000. So you have to ask yourself, do you think you're good enough? And I remember having this conversation with my uncle, who was a player, and of course I have some cousins that are been in and out of the system, playing bigs, whatnot, and I tell you, it is a bumpy road. So if you think you're just going to walk in, and family affiliates too, if you're going to walk in to play professional baseball, you better think again. It is a very long and tumultuous road. And so they don't get paid a lot of money early on. You really have to earn it. And then when you get to the bigs, you earn a really strong league minimum. I think it's somewhere around $755,000. But the reality is, if you have an agent, the agent's going to gobble up about 20% of that. Taxes are going to gobble up about 30 to 40% of that. And then you're probably left with about $250,000, $300,000. And you're going to have to really budget that money, because how many years are you going to make that kind of money? In the grand scheme of things, the average American makes what? About $55,000 or so a year. And that's head of household. That's a very heavy dose of reality. How long is your baseball career going to last? On average, about maybe 2.5 years, maybe 3 years, something to that effect, if you're good enough. That's if you're good enough and you can avoid injury. With today's strength and conditioning, I would argue that players are being trained wrong physically. Baseball players are supposed to have long, lean muscles, not big, bulky muscles. And those long, lean muscle players, they have longer careers, generally speaking, because they have not been overworked, elbows not overworked, shoulders not overworked. No, they're doing the things that they're supposed to do. Back when I was playing in the day, long, lean muscles, there were only certain movements that we were allowed to make with weights in the first place. And so the reality is, the strength and conditioning coaches are, in my opinion, they're hurting these kids. And that's why you have kids, non-pitchers, Tommy John surgery, this, that, and the other, which is the ulnar nerve. The issue is, these players should not be training the way they are. And their career span could be so short with the long, bumpy road to get to Major League Baseball. Hell, even to play in minor league baseball, it is a bumpy road, folks. So if you think baseball players have it easy, they also play 162 games in a year, which that is a lot of games. So believe it, these guys work, and it's not all fun and games because it is business. Anyway, folks, we're out of time, and we're out of business today on the Sports Circus. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you in about 23 hours right here on your favorite station. Until then, so long, everyone.
Can your IRA stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. Find out how to safeguard your assets with a tax-free rollover with a Genesis Gold IRA. the only IRA that can hold physical precious metals. Call now for your free gold and silver report. Protect your IRA today with one simple phone call and learn how to qualify for up to $10,000 in free silver. Call Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. That's 800-932-5517.